Hi guys, it's Hannah and welcome back to the Dyslexic Reader. Today we are having a book haul. These were all incredibly cheap. I've got 9 books to show you that I've got in the last couple of weeks, and I found now that we can get out again, I have been buying more books than usual, and I think that's because my libraries still aren't open. The bookshops are open and you can go and browse books and touch books and buy them, but you can't go into a library and browse books and pick them up and check them out. So as someone who the majority of my reads every year comes from the library, and being missing that, so obviously reading just all of my own books, it definitely has prompted me to buy more books. So that being said, I found some good deals, and probably if the library had been open and it had been a regular year, I'd have thought maybe a wee bit more about these, but because I have to read what I have at home, I'm not being as picky, especially when I got such a good deal. So the first 3 books are new, and then the next 6 books are secondhand from a charity shop. So I was out in the town and I was walking past HMV, which is typically like a music store, but they had a big sign in the window and it said 2 books for £6, so £3 each. And I noticed on the poster they showed some of the types of books they had, and they had June. And this has been a book that I have been really wanting to read for a while. My library does not have the series, and I feel like it's the kind of book for like big fantasy books like this. I don't tend to want to read the audiobook or an ebook, especially not for the first one in the series. Once I'm in and I know the characters and I've had a look at the map at the start and all that kind of stuff, if I'm comfortable with the series, I could dip into an audiobook. But I was never able to find it cheap online anywhere. I checked quite regularly when I was doing my book shopping and I was browsing online, and it was always like 10, 12 pounds, even second hand. So I just never got around it because I thought I had loads of other books. It's not like I'm busting to read it. But when I saw it on the window, and I thought, well, £3 would be an amazing deal because I can't find it for anywhere less than 10, even second hand. So I went in to look at the books, and I did end up getting, I got 4 books because it was 2 for £6, but one of the books was for my mum. My mum was with me and I was having a hard time picking a 4th book. And I wasn't having, there was loads of choice, but I was kind of him and hawing between a couple, and I noticed she had picked one up and looked at it and held it for a while and then went and put it down. She obviously couldn't find the second one, so I got that for her, and then made my 3 up to 4. So I got 3 books out of there, so I suppose it would have been £9 for the 3. So for anyone who doesn't know, June is just classic sci-fi. It's set in space on a desert world with giant worms, and I think someone is kind of like outcast from a powerful family, or maybe is like dethroned, something like that. Someone is kicked out from like the high ranks, and they kind of, I think, raise like almost a rebellion to take it back. So it's very Star Warsy. It says before the Matrix, before Star Wars, before Ender's Game, and before Neuromancer, there was June, the greatest science fiction novel ever written. And this is a quite a long series, I believe, but as I said, I wouldn't mind. I think you can pick the other ones up secondhand cheaper because most people want the first in the series, so there's more demand for that. And as well, once I get into it, I might be happy with audiobooks and ebooks, so that was quite a steal. That's what I went in for. The second book I picked up was one that I had been looking at a couple of times in the library. I'd had on my Goodreads want to read list. And the reason why I didn't get it from the library was I feel like it's not a book that you would want to read in 3 weeks. 3 weeks is how long you get library books out for, and not that you couldn't read it in 3 weeks, but I feel like it's the type of book that you'll want to pick up, read a wee bit, and then read something else and come back to it. And that's 4321 by Paul, I'm not sure if it's Auster or Auster, not sure. And this is a story, and it starts in 1947 in New Jersey when a boy is born, and this story goes through like 4 alternative lives for him. So from that single beginning, Ferguson's life takes 4 simultaneous and independent fictional paths. 4 Fergusons made of the same genetic material, 4 boys who are the same boy, go on to lead 4 parallel and entirely different lives. Family fortunes diverge, love and friendships and intellectual passions contrast. Chapter by chapter, the rotating narratives evolve into an elaborate dance of inner worlds enfolded within the outer forces of history, as one by one, the intimate plot of each Ferguson's story rushes on across a tumultuous and fractured terrain of mid-20th century America. A boy grows up again and again and again. And it just sounds super interesting, but I think it's going to be a slow read. It's a massive book as well, and I didn't want to get it from the library and be forced to read it in a time frame, so that's mostly why I didn't pick it up from there, and I've been keeping an eye out for it cheap. Also, because for our library, you can renew the book if no one has requested it, but if someone has requested it, you have to bring it back, and I didn't want to get it out and get halfway through it and then someone request it and then we have to bring it back, and then they have it for at least 3 weeks and someone else might have requested, you know, then you could be like third in the line by the time you had your 3 weeks up, so you could be waiting months to get it back. So I'm really happy I managed to buy this. And the third book that I got follow that again, a book that I've been wanting to read, but I just feel it didn't fall into the category of getting it from the library because I didn't want the time constraint on it, and that is A Little Life by Hanneke Hara. I'm so sorry for butchering that name. And again, this is a very popular book. It won it was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, but I think it won a whole load of awards. And it's a very like follow the life story as well. I believe it's from a couple of friends, 4 classmates, and it follows them kind of from a small Massachusetts college, moved to New York. So yes, they're just all out of college. They're broke adrift and buoyed by only their friendship and ambition. And it follows the 4 characters over decades, their relationships deepen and darken, tinged by addiction, success and pride. So it's just basically 4 mates. They get out of college, they move to New York. They're all obviously different people, different circumstances, and they follow different life paths, but their stories like stay entwined. I'm not sure if they stay friends or not. And people have been saying that it's a real hard book to read. It's very like sad at the end. So I'm just interested, but again, a book that I think, especially if it's very heavy, that I'll want to read bits of and then take a break and go and read something else and come back to it. So another one that didn't really fit for me into the library category, so I was glad I was able to buy that. And then onto my charity shop finds, which were chef kisses. So good. I managed to get 6 books, 50p each, so it was £3 for all 6 books. So each one of these new books was £3 each, which is still ridiculously expensive, but all these books were £3 for all 6, which when I was thinking on the way home, I was trying to work out like £3 wouldn't even get you into the cinema, and how much entertainment do you get out of the cinema, like time wise, compared to how much time you're going to spend reading 6 books. And that's only if you read them once. You could reread them again and again and again. So super exciting. The first one I picked up sounds bad, but in a good way, like a cheesy bad that like on a rainy day with a cup of tea, and you'll probably sounds like quick pace and you'll just enjoy it. It is the first in a series, but it sounds like from reading it that like you can read it on its own and then continue on if you're not one of them kind of books. And the reason it drew my attention was obviously the first thing you see is the spine, and it's called Half Bad, and it reminded me, and the name of it's gone now, but it reminded me of a book that I read years ago and really enjoyed. So I picked it up to see if it was the same author, if it was that book, if it was a sequel or something. Maybe it was about what's it called, Good Girl Gone Bad or something. And it was about a young girl who had murdered her mother and was put into foster care, but no one knew that she had murdered her mother, and it was like her internal diary, and it was very like an unworthy narrator kind of story that had a really good twist at the end. So that's what drew me to this. And then I picked it up, Half Bad, and I thought I'll flip it over to read the blurb. Half Bad, black and white. There's no description of what this book is. So I start looking in the front cover to see, you know, a lot of books have the synopsis in the first cover, especially if they have reviews on the back. No, I can just see the contents and it's all split into parts. So I look at the back, and the only thing that I could find about it, it says continue Nathan's story in Half Wild, coming spring 2015. So that's obviously for the second book in the series. And then this little like poster, which was obviously used to describe it. And it says Nathan Byrne is half bad. He's half white witch, half black witch. His mother was a healer. His father is a killer. Wanted by no one and hunted by everyone. And that's all it says. So to me, that sounds... Hopefully it's not a cliffhanger where you read the one and you have to read the second one, and I'm going to have to go on the hunt for these if it's interesting. But it just sounds like this guy, he's a witch, he's like caught between like two types of witches. Like, that sounds interesting. So I just think this will be a nice, hopefully a quick paced read for some rainy afternoon. Then I picked up this, and I didn't even read the blurb until I got home. This is The Irresistible Inheritance of Wilberforce by Paul Torday. And I have read a couple of books by Paul Torday before and loved them all. So when I saw Paul Torday for 50p, I didn't even read the blurb till I got home. But when I did, it sounds super interesting. So it seems it's about Wilberforce, who is a young, like, rich workaholic. And he, for some reason, someday decides to take a slightly different route home from work, and this impulsive act means that he stumbles upon a man who is like a stately homeowner and is very into wines. And he gets in with this crowd, he befriends them, he starts hanging out with them, they're all drinking wine, he gets really into his wine, and they go to lessons and tastings and all this kind of stuff. And he thinks, finally, I found friends, I found hobbies, I found a purpose, I'm not a workaholic. But apparently it goes dark very quick. As his horizons broaden and his heart expands, Wilberforce becomes a willing pupil to Francis, that's the guy who owns the stately house, Francis's master, and in the cellars he nurtures a newfound passion for fine wine. But even the finest wine can leave a bitter aftertaste, and Wilberforce will learn that the Undercroft holds some unpalatable secrets and a passion that comes at a price, chronicling the vintage years of Wilberforce's life. So I'm not sure if there's like a previous book about the same character. The Irresistible Inheritance of Wilberforce is a dazzling, haunting story of obsession, addiction, loyalty, and betrayal. So that just sounds really interesting to me. Kind of outside my typical read, but also within it enough that like I should fall into it nicely. The next one was a book that I have been waiting for a while to find in the charity shop, but I never thought I would find it this cheap in the charity shop. I never thought I'd find it for 50p. I thought I would find it for a couple of pound. And this is The World Without End by Ken Follett, and it is the second in a trilogy. So about a year ago at a local book swap, my husband picked up Pillars of Earth, which is the first in the trilogy, and I thought I've been interested in reading those, but I tend not to like reading series until I have them all, because as I say, I tend to buy books secondhand when you see them, kind of hunting them out, and you never just come across them as you need them. You have to wait for them to come to you almost. So I thought, yes, really interested in reading this. Great start, we have the first book, but I would really like to find the others before I start. Otherwise, you'll read this, love it, and it'll take you years to find the second one. Then in my last haul a couple of weeks ago, I was at the charity shop and I found A Column of Fire, which is the third book, and this was £1 in the charity shop. So I thought that's great. We have two of them, £2. Even if I really have to go and buy the second one at full price, I still will have got the other two for £1, so it'll even out the series. And then today, the book gods blessed me and I found the second one for 50p. So I've got the whole series for £1.50, and these are big chunky fantasy, so I'm really interested in getting to these as soon as possible. They look super interesting, super fun. I've heard really good things about it. I think Knightsbridge is the name of the series, but I hear people just calling it the Pillars of Earth trilogy. So I'll read you the blurb on the first one, because obviously the blurb on the second one won't make like that much sense. Set in the turbulent times of 12th century England, when civil war, famine, religious strife, and battles over royal succession tore lives and families apart, The Pillars of Earth tells the story of the buildings of a magnificent cathedral. Against this richly imagined backdrop filled with intrigue and treachery, Ken Follett draws the readers irresistibly into a wonderful epic family of drama, violent conflict, unswerving ambition. From humble stonemasons to imperial monarchs, the dreams, labours, and loves of his characters come vividly to life. The Pillars of Earth is without doubt a masterpiece that has proven one of the most popular books of our time. So I guess it's not really it's more historical fiction than fantasy, but just when I think of like a medieval kind of style stories, I always think of fantasy. And this one actually has illustrations for the parts, which are really pretty. So really happy to get those. That is a winner. And speaking of trilogies, when I was browsing, so my charity shop the one that I like love. There's loads in the city, but there's 2 dedicated solely to books, and one of them is in the university area, and it's the same charity. It's purely books, just like the other one, but because it's in the university quarter and they think that they do like more academic books, their books are always dearer. You'll see the same books in both shops, both the same company, but like it's dearer in the university quarter, so I tend not to go to that one. I do sometimes browse their sale rack because it's still really cheap, but the one in the city centre is where it's at, and their sale carts are always outside if it's not raining. If it's raining, their sale carts won't be out, but normally they have 3 sale carts, and one of them's children's books, and then the other 2 is just adult, every genre, and every book on the carts is 50p. So I was browsing and I see this nice yellow looking spine, and I noticed that it said 1 on top, and I thought I could take that out and look at it and see if it sounds interesting, because it's the first in the series. I'll not have to have the others. And then as I lifted it, I was like, you're in the middle of loads of series. You don't want to be starting a series that you don't have the rest of, that you're going to have to go hunting for. So I put it back. Then I went to another cart and I noticed book 2. And I thought, well, I could probably get 1 and 2. And I looked up on Goodreads, and it's only a trilogy, and if I have to buy 1 and 2 here, and then if I really enjoy them and I have to buy 3 online, again, it's only buying 1 book, even if it's more expensive. These 2 are only 50p each, so if I'm really enjoying the series, I can splurge on the 3rd book. So I go back and get the first one, and I've got the second one, and then I go to the 3rd cart, and these are all the different carts apart from each other. I find the 3rd book, and it is only a trilogy, so this is all the books in the Alexander series by Filero Massimo Manfredi. I'm sure that's terribly wrong as well. It's an Italian author. I was actually looking up his life story. His life is super interesting. So these were originally written in Italian, and his wife is his translator. She translates them from Italian into English, so hopefully that means it'll be a good translation, because she can like convey to him, like, get the most accurate translation, like, does this sit, or like, what were you exactly meaning by this word? So hopefully the translation is good. It's also an international bestseller. It has been translated into 30 languages and sold in 60 countries or something, and he is a archaeologist, and he lectures archaeology in a couple of different universities across Europe, and his life just sounded super interesting, so I think he needs a film made about him. But as an archaeologist, which is a really hard word to say, all of his books kind of center around like ancient times, and these ones specifically are ancient Greece. A huge international bestseller, Alexander Child of Dreams, which is the first one, is the first in Valentino Massimo Manfredi's outstanding trilogy of brutal passion and grand adventure in ancient Greece. And if you watched my, I'm sorry, my nose is so itchy today. If you watched my wrap up for July, I read all the Percy Jacksons. That was a reread, and I've started reading Heroes of Olympus, so I'm into ancient Greece at the minute. Who could have been born to conquer the world other than a god? A boy, born to the great king Philip of Macedonia and his sensacious queen Olympias. Alexander became a young man of immense and unfathomable potential under the tutelage of the great Aristotle and his friendships with Ptolemy and Hestion, I want to pronounce that. He became the mightiest and most charismatic warrior capable of subjugating the known world to his power. A marvellous novel in one of history's greatest characters and his quest to conquer the civilized world. And I actually, when I came home and I was scanning these all into Goodreads to put them on my like physical TBR, and I was reading the synopsis on Goodreads, and the synopsis on Goodreads actually sounded more interesting than the blurb on the back of the book. So we have Child of a Dream, The Ends of the Earth, and then The Sands of Ambition, and they're yellow, orange and red, and they're all foiled in bronze, silver and gold. So the first one is bronze foil for the name and the cover art, and then the second one is orange with silver foil, and then the final one is this peachy red color with gold foil. So they're really nice books. When I brought them home and I was telling my husband about all the books and I was kind of going through them one by one and telling him what they were and everything else, he was just like drawn to these and he kept going to pick them up. And I was like, no, I'm telling you about this one. Wait, we'll get to those. And he was like, they just look like really like well designed, like intriguing books. So that's always a good sign. So as I go through and pick off all the 50 pre-sale tags off the back of these, I hope you've had a good day. If you've read any of these books and have any thoughts on them, let me know down below. I hope you're all happy. I hope you're all healthy, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye.